By the same name, by the Canadian writer, Mordecai Richler. And do you want to talk about the movie and where
Well,
and the
I
book?
mean, this was a labor of love for both of us, and originally, about 12 years ago, when the book was written, Mordecai's last and perhaps best novel, Robert read it and immediately optioned it. He had known Mordecai, having made Joshua Then and Now some 10 years earlier, right? And they were friends. And so these guys started the project together, and unfortunately Mordecai passed away, and sort of leaving the mantle of the responsibility of making this movie with Robert. And he basically, went through, hoops to get it right.
Do you want to talk about some of those hoops that you went through, because this was 20 years in the making?
Not quite, but long enough. How about 12?
Okay.
Right? This is a the difficulty really arises from the fact that this is a great novel by a great author, and that commands the need for a great screenplay, one that is that preserves the integrity of the book, and yet doesn't kowtow to it, because if the book couldn't be filmed, it's written all in first-person narration, and it would be 10 hours long. So that, in the absence of the author, Mordecai Richler, who was going to write the screenplay, the challenge became one of finding someone who could write in his voice and find cinematic language for the telling of the story. And that took, and then lots of people tried, and eventually, and that's what took most of the time. It's Mordecai Richler is one of the great novelists of our time, and to me, but he was more than that, because he was a friend and he was an icon, and his novel, The Apprenticeship of Dottie Kravitz, was compulsory reading in high school when I went to high school, and was one of the few times that I really enjoyed homework. So he had a major role in my life. So it was because he passed away, it became sort of our mission to do justice to his final book, and there was no reason to rush it into production until we felt we had a screenplay that actually did that. And then once we did, and we started to send it to actors, everyone reacted to it as we did, in that the screenplay is what attracted this spectacular, stellar cast that really is what matters the most in a movie, and what makes the whole thing sing. And Paul Giamatti and Dustin Hoffman and Rosamund Pike and Minnie Driver and Rochelle Lefevre and Scott Speedman, who give flesh and blood to these words on paper and bring them home to an audience.
Actually, Paul Giamatti was great playing the lead character in this movie. He played Barney, but then there was also Dustin Hoffman, who played his father. And Dustin, I just thought, was amazing. And I had read that Dustin actually wanted to play Barney, but there's a kind of a funny story attached to that, is there not?
Well, he couldn't play Barney because at the beginning of this movie, Barney's 30 years old. So what he said was, I should have been Barney. And had we made this movie 30 years ago, no doubt he would have been. But the next thing he said is, since I can't be Barney now, why should I be in the movie at all? And that took some convincing.
So, and who was involved in winning over Dustin Hoffman?
Well, I mean, the part was great, but both of us, met with him separately, and he sussed us out and decided we were okay folk, and lucky enough he loved the project, and he loved Paul. He loved the idea of working with Paul. So we were really blessed to have him on the movie.
And Paul is not what Hollywood thinks of as a traditional leading man, which is actually what made him perfect for this role. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this would not be served well by a traditional leading man. This is a movie about a very real person, very sort of, and someone who's very deeply flawed and sensitive and, you know, a curmudgeon. And, you know, you want an anti-hero here. You want someone sort of against type. And surprisingly enough, that was Dustin Hoffman's claim to fame when he broke in with The Graduate 40 years ago. And, you know, he was the first of sort of the non-traditional leading men to do this kind of role, to lead a film.
Just to add to that, you know, this character of Barney Panofsky, he's politically incorrect, he's irreverent, he pretty much never says the right thing. He always says what comes. He has no filters. He has no fear. He does things that most people would never imagine doing, like running out of his own wedding because he's met someone else. He doesn't pull any punches. So he says kind of the wrong things, but he always does the right thing, except for once, and for that he pays a very big price.
So this is, it's a modern day tale, it's a love story, it's a mystery, it's a lot of different things rolled into one movie, and that's also because the book is so immense in terms of his story, his history, and his life.
But at the heart of this is the relationship between a man and the true love of his life, who turns out to be his third wife, Miriam. The first two are kind of stepping stones that prepare him to actually be able to love. And underneath that, it's the relationship he has with his father, Dustin Hoffman, and his best friend, Scott Speedman. And that's really the heart of this. And then, because we inherited a very rich book, you know, we were blessed with a complexity, the complexity that mirrors real life. Life is complex.
Because his life is really a journey, and that's what is sort of great about this type of movie, is that it's not, you know, it's not a genre film. It's not it can't be easily categorized. It's really like sort of the way we snake our way through life, you know, that we move through this direction, that direction. We have this experience, that experience. This anecdote takes us to that anecdote. And I think that, you know, it's really true to life, the way this story works in this movie.
Now, Thursday night's showing went really well, as far as I could tell. You had a packed house. You had a Q&A afterwards with a lot of questions and comments from the audience. And how did you feel about it, and how does it compare to, you showed at the Venice Film Festival, which I heard was huge, and you showed at Toronto as well, which, you know, there's a lot of history there because, again, you're a Canadian writer, Mordecai, and all of that. So how did all of these different showings compare to this one here in the Hamptons?
Well, I mean, this is really special for us because it's the U.S. premiere of the movie. It's the first time we've shown this movie on American soil. And, you know, this is the show, man. This is where it is. So we were really pleased that it was received so well last night in both theaters, because it was in 2 theaters, which was really nice of them to do. So I mean, we had a really nice reception in Venice and Toronto, and here as well.
And the film has already been picked up. It's going to be distributed. So when will people be able to see it?
Officially, it comes out on January 14, but there will be a 1-week qualifying run in New York and LA in December.